All right, welcome back to The Struggle is Not Real, the podcast where we challenge the beliefs that hold entrepreneurs back and replace them with strategies for lasting growth. I am Mike Gandolfo. I'm joined by the queen of coaching, Kristin Tabbert, and New York Times bestselling author, Michael Lennington. How are you guys doing?
Doing really well, thank you.
Yeah? All right.
I'll let you speak first. I'm doing pretty good too.
I actually have some exciting news to share with you guys.
Yes.
If people don't know this, by the way, and I think people who probably listen to this show would be the type that would maybe want to write a book. And I think we've talked about it a little bit on this thing, but Michael's helping authors write a book and doing this lightning draft process or zero draft. I'm really still.
It's the lightning draft. We call it zero draft in the beginning.
At first. Yeah. And we changed the lightning draft.
That's a bad idea. So we
lightning draft. Well, the draft was given to a publisher, and I might be, they want to like move it up the flagpole, but now I've got to do kind of what you had to do, Michael, when you wrote the 12-week year. It wasn't originally the 12-week year. It was periodization. And I need to get it from 24,000 words now to 40,000 words.
Yeah. I don't think it's going to be a problem for you, Mike.
I don't think it is either, because I'm long-winded, right? Is that what you're trying to say? I'm long-winded?
No, that's what I'm saying.
No, I need to develop I definitely think there's some ways to develop the story a little bit deeper and go further, but it's really an interesting, and I was going to use a different analogy for today's topic, talking about the finish line is not the end, because we went through this process, and we went through a 12-week process writing the book, and that was the finish line, I guess, was the 12 weeks. Well, there was only a couple of us in that cohort that was actually the end, right? I think everyone at the end of that 12 weeks had something. Like we all had something. We were all a lot further along than we would have been if it wasn't for the 12 weeks. But then it needed to go to the next thing. And really, and you can talk about this a little bit, Michael, because I'm completely throwing my show notes away and just starting off with a whole different thing. But this is, and I even though we just talked about it 5 minutes ago in the pre-meeting, this just hit me. I think that you can talk about, like, the goal for you all was not for us to have an actual potentially like real book. It was to have this lightning draft, and you can talk about what the lightning draft is and how it kind of equates here. But then we all had to go through these other processes, right? Like now we had to go through, okay, well, now I've got something. What do I want the next 12 weeks to look like? What do I want to do with it from here? And then some of us had a greater attention to others, and some people put it on the shelf for a little bit, and some people put it on the shelf and revisited it, and all these kind of things happened. And I was kind of that person. But the whole book process is, and show Scott's book for sure. How cool was it to get that in the mail, by the way? Mine's really downstairs.
Awesome. This is Scott's book, and it's got, as he wanted a shiny glossy cover that has a dust cover on it. So he got that.
That's right. He got his book. I was so excited to see it because I actually had my hands on that thing before I got my copy. Him and I were together in Lynchburg, Virginia. We were celebrating Thomas Nolan's 50th birthday, and he pulled it out and showed it to me. Cut that and save it.
Yeah, you think of that, like, just think of that.
Dirty minds of old men.
Yeah.
But the reality of it is just, it's so cool. But and then for me to go, like, I took the risk. I was at this event. I met a publisher. I went ahead and just gave her what I had, and I knew it was complete in a way, but it wasn't finished. I came to one end, but there was more to go with that. And I think it's really, when we talk about the 12-week year side of things, and we talk about getting to a big goal or hitting a sales cycle or whatever else, like, and I'm actually going to ask Kristin this question first. Kristin, when you get someone who completes a 12-week cycle, they either got their goal or they didn't. Either one's valuable, by the way. But what are the typical responses that you see from people at the end of a 12-week cycle when they go through a complete 12-week cycle? What are the is there some arrival syndrome that's in there? Is there some people that feel like I just did this big thing and now there's kind of an emptiness because I don't know what's next? Do they get content? And really what we're looking for, how many people are actually using that to launch them into the next thing,
Really great questions. And I think the one that really answers it the most is what you said. It's not really about arrival syndrome. It's more, I did it, whether you successfully hit the goal or you didn't, you completed 12 weeks. That in of itself is success. Whether or not the goal was hit, you set out to do something, you did it for 12 weeks, there's success in that. But then it is, what's next? What do I do next? And some people are like, I did this, I don't want to do this again. It raises a lot of self-confrontation. You have to do a lot of kind of analysis about who you are and what you're willing to do and pay the cost moving forward. And we are creatures of comfort. And a lot of people just go back to doing what they've always done, especially if they have a comfortable life. The ones that hit their goals or came close to hitting their goals, and they know that this is the thing that can help elevate them to the next level, that is the big overarching question for them. What next? What's the next logical goal that's going to sequentially get me to that bigger, compelling vision?
So we talked about this a little bit on one of the shows really recently about your all's trip to the Grand Canyon and how rough it was, and you saw it through, and you got to it, and you got to the finish line, you got to the top, and
First we had to get to the bottom.
Huh?
First we had to get to the bottom.
You had to get to the bottom. You had to descend before you could ascend. Yep. What was the feeling with you guys? I mean, again, it's not just saying, because that was not saying, hey, I just want to show up at the Grand Canyon, walk the Grand Canyon. You all had weeks of preparation. I'm getting ready to work the marathon in Louisville tomorrow for the Kentucky Derby Festival. And whenever people prepare for something like that, like it's weeks and weeks of preparation, it's getting it all ready for this one thing, and you do the thing. What was it like when you got your feet on the ground, and was it like, I want to do it again, or I accomplished that and that's it, or what is it? What was it?
Yeah, I think we both, all of us, the whole group, the question was, what's next for us after this? And, I got to believe in some ways that was a small piece of the ingredients to Scott's success of his book launch. Inspired Campfire is this thing that he's very passionate about. And the book tells his story about that passion. For us, it was, the canyon, I can't speak for Michael, but, for me, the canyon was one of the hardest things I've ever done in my life. And it's like, so there is nothing in business that will ever be as hard as what I physically went through, especially on that ascent out of the canyon. So it was the what's next in a lot of ways every single day that pushes me through business decisions and discomfort in my business plans that I'm working on moving forward.
I want to stay on that for just a little bit, Michael, and I'm not ignoring you. But Kristin, I just want to because I think it's really relatable, especially just some stuff that I'm kind of going through too. And am I hearing you say that almost like when you're going through the business world and you're like, hey, I was able to be as uncomfortable as I possibly could be in that Grand Canyon doing something that was super, like if I can do that, do you draw confidence from that? Like if I could do that, if I can see it to that end, and I don't have to necessarily look pretty doing it, but I was able to get to, go ahead.
That's one of the things that really put the spotlight on it. We have these assumptions about how we have to show up for others, how we need to look for others. You aren't going to be pretty in the canyon. You are at your absolute worst. Your hair is a disaster. You don't get to shower for 3 days. You smell, and we all smell, and we all knew that, but it was just a part of the discomfort of pushing out of it. We couldn't have the success without the smelliness that came with it. And it really put the spotlight too on what's your real pain tolerance? Physically, mentally, emotionally, spiritually, financially. We have tolerances that go beyond our comfort zones, but our comfort is the thing that says, I can't do any more than this. Well, that physical trip to the canyon, that every time I said, I can't take another step, I took 10 more steps. So I found out what my real pain tolerance, my real physical tolerance was all about. And business is easy compared to that. So when you start to go, I can't do this, I don't know how to do this, or even I don't want to do this, you can go so much farther than that moment.
Michael, what was your experience getting out of the canyon?
That's a good question. I didn't have as much physical difficulty as Kristin did, or someone else that was on the trip with us had, for whatever reason. I probably would now, but back then I was feeling pretty good.
It wasn't that long ago.
Yeah, a couple years ago. But
was it 2 or was it last year?
2 years.
Yes, 2 days ago was our 1 year or 2 year anniversary
Okay,
of
all right.
crossing that threshold.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, I didn't have the same, my stress was different. I was stressing for Kristin, right? So I was worried about her, and my focus was on her. And it was, that was my trip. Going down, Kristin was fine. So, we had the hike we expected. Going up, I was really concerned for Kristin. And so we're kind of doing it together. And that was my experience, was just about what it was like for her more than what I was going through at the time.
Well, there's some power in that too, knowing that you all can get through anything together,
Yeah.
Like, I want to add this, that with the passing of time, those experiences have changed for us as well. And because I was just thinking, the person who was our guide in that, we've talked about Andrew before, he passed away, and those experiences from the canyon now have a different perspective, at least for me. I was thinking about when you asked Michael, how was it for you? And Michael, you and Andrew had some amazing conversations that I was very, very fortunate to be able to listen to, because I didn't have capacity to speak and interject. So I got to hear things I probably wouldn't have heard in different environments. And now when you replay those conversations, I'm looking at those conversations through a different lens, because there'll never be that conversation or any conversations with him ever again. So they're taking on a different quality that's changing things moving forward, if that makes sense.
Yeah. Yeah.
Well,
go ahead.
What was were you, when you got out of the canyon, were you like, I want to do that again, I want to go find the next adventure? What was or was it, I checked that off the box and I'm ready to, what was your thing?
No, I feel like I'm taking over the conversation here, but it was not, hey, I checked that box. It was, this is a stepping stone to whatever the next thing may be. We've had some mild adventures since then, but we haven't had another Grand Canyon type adventure. And it shows there is a gap, and we're talking about what that next adventure looks like and how we experience it, what we're going to be doing, how it's going to change us, and how we'll incorporate that into our lives moving forward.
Yeah. I think about the marathon you're talking about, Mike, tomorrow in the Grand Canyon. And buddy of mine, his name is Dan Blake, and he's riding his bike across the U.S. And he's
the skier guy, right? Is that the skier friend of yours?
Yeah, he's a skier friend of mine. Yeah. And so he's riding his bike across the U.S. west to east, and he's riding for something called Stroke Onward. And part of the ride is he gets donations. He's generated almost 25K at this point for that charity. But the thing is that, Dan is one of those guys that sets this goal, and he's going to make it happen. He's a former Marine, and like they say, you can tell a Marine, but you can't tell him much. And that kind of describes Dan, as he's pretty focused on this, and he's making it happen. And it makes me think about these singular goals. Like, a lot of times we set goals for our business that are repetitive in a way. They tend to look the same. I want to generate this kind of revenue, and I want to do this thing. And, those goals repeat 12-week year after 12-week year after 12-week year. And this thing about this kind of singular goal that you're shooting for, whether you're an Olympic athlete or you're doing this bike ride across the Grand Canyon, or, you guys climb Kilimanjaro, right? So
I didn't, but yeah.
Oh, I thought you did.
I was, it's a long story.
Okay. Sorry. Didn't mean to bring anything else.
Yeah, it's okay. I would have missed Nia's basketball senior night if
that's
I
what it was.
Yeah,
okay.
So I did not go.
So, but it's what I apologize for that, because in my age, my memory is as good as
Scott and Carl went, but yes,
yeah. But that goal, the singular goal, where you shoot for something and then it's over, is a different thing than just setting goals in your business that you repeat, right? And I think that the thing about those really stretched goals, they're singular focus. They suck up your time and your mental energy for the preparation, for the execution. And then there's this kind of down, rest and relax mode, right? Where you recover and you learn. And I think one of the things about those kind of goals is that those goals, I think more than just the repeating goals, change you, right? There's some things that you're different afterwards than you are before. And some of that is just the ability to take on big things, right? To be able to do big stuff, you've got to do big stuff. And that sounds kind of redundant, but what I mean by that is that if you set a goal like that, that's going to call on you to have to give your very best, to deliver beyond what you would deliver outside of the fact you have that goal. And it stretches you mentally and physically, even spiritually. And then you come back from that and you have this kind of rest afterwards and reflection. You're a different person. And I think there's steps up. Every time you have a goal like that, you get better, you grow. And that's kind of what I look at those. But the goals at work, right, are different than that, because you're basically, you're setting similar goals unless you're changing your business a lot. You're setting similar goals every 12 weeks. And the ability to do that, I think you kind of get into a rut sometimes. You kind of get into you're stuck. And I think sometimes sabbaticals are really good, because after those big goals, you have some downtime afterwards, right? So after the marathon, you're gonna have some downtime. After the hill, after climbing the mountain, have some downtime. Same thing with the big goals, but I think sometimes, it's good to have those downtimes to plan some time away. So plan a couple of weeks to kind of reflect and regenerate, and before you set your next goal. I think that can be really helpful sometimes, because if all you're doing is chasing it, it doesn't give you the ability to assimilate what you're learning as much.
And I actually, something else popped in my head while you're saying that, all that brilliant stuff, which was fantastic. I'm glad that Kristin and I could have a conversation so that you could collect your thoughts.
Yeah, exactly.
Was really like, and Kristin will know this one I'm talking about too, but we have a friend who's, got some, just drifted into some bad habits, and he would do things like 75 hard, and he would eliminate that bad habit out of his life for the 75 hard, and he's done it a couple times, but then it was like, well, I always knew there was a day 76, and you just go right back into the bad habit, right? So like, it's almost sometimes too, it's like, that the pain of a one singular focused goal is kind of, the pain's temporary, and it's going to go away, and then it's like, it's having that intentionality of how you're going to come out of it, and where you want to go from there, right? Like, do you want to drift back to where you were, or did you want to elevate your life in some ways? Did you want to move forward in a better direction? Did you want to have that experience actually transform you and change you? Or did you want to just prove to yourself that you could do something for 75 days?
That's a really good question.
So I don't know.
I think the answer is different for everybody, like
And
with
for every goal. Yeah.
Yeah, it was, I could do 75 days because I knew there was a 76th day.
Yeah.
And so you already had that back door built in for giving yourself the excuse to go back to doing the things that you said you didn't want to do to begin with. But
that's true. That's true. But can I interject for just a second? Because I think there's a victim mentality sometimes to the habits you have, the things, because there's a difference in a goal between stopping something and starting something. Stopping something is a low energy state. I mean, you don't have to do anything to stop. You just stop doing stuff, right? So if I want to quit smoking, I'm just not going to smoke. I want to quit drinking, I'm just not going to drink. And that's a low energy state. So it's easy to set a goal like that. But if you have some kind of a mental or physical addiction to the thing, then there's the struggle of that, right? But I think an ability to stop and to abstain strengthens your ability to do that permanently as well. So, I mean, when I used to smoke, and I used to joke, it's easy to quit. I quit a lot of times, right? But finally I quit. I haven't had a smoke since I was 19. Haven't had, I smoke a cigar occasionally, that Mike, and I was smoking one on screen here a bit ago, but I'm talking about cigarettes, and I was addicted to cigarettes, and I quit a million times, but I finally quit. And I think there is something about showing yourself who the real master is of the situation. Even though you start again, you have 75 hard thing and 76 days, it's still better than not.
Kristin, you have insights?
I was kind of, my mind's kind of spinning a little bit.
Yeah.
I think we can get stuck in, there is a 76th day, but at the same time, if it keeps leading us back to another day one, there's always, to Michael's point, stopping's easy in some things, starting is always hard. But if we can say I've done it and I can go to day one again, I think there's some real mental breakthroughs that can occur with that.
And that's the beautiful thing, I think, Michael, the 13th week, when you'll teach the 12-week year. And it's actually something that I don't think is expanded on enough in the 12-week year book, and it's definitely not expanded enough in the field guide, because it's such a powerful piece of this whole thing. I mean, you've talked about the power of reviewing. You talked about using that 13th week if you've gotten behind, to give yourself a little extra runway to kind of maybe to finish the deal. You've talked about that's a great way to reward yourself by planning a vacation during that 13th week, or a little trip or whatever to celebrate. Talk about just the power of the 13th week in your own words.
I think that's a really good question. And I'm just going to use a quick example of the guy I was talking about before, Dan Blake. He organizes his 12-week years around going out and skiing in Colorado. So when the snow's fresh and it's falling in the fall after Thanksgiving, he takes off between Thanksgiving and New Year's to go skiing out west. So he has this huge break built in. So he's got a 7 or 8 week 12-week year, and then he's got a big break. So he designs his execution cycles around what's important to him in his life, which is, I think, a really good way of doing it. Mm-hmm. And so that 13th week, we build it in because you have to have a rest. You have to have a time to reflect what worked for you in the last 12 weeks, what didn't, what's the learning you want to capture for the next 12 weeks. So if you're doing that every 12 weeks, you can get a little bit better and just kind of go do that step function up. And that's really important. The other part of it is that it's important to have some time to just let yourself relax, celebrate. What we celebrate is what we value. So if we celebrate a success in the 12-week year, we'll begin to take that more seriously. So celebration is a key part. And I think then, creating a new plan for the next 12, so you don't just fall off, you reset and reload. But, Mike, what you said, though, I think is important, is that, if you're going to take vacation in the middle of a 12-week year, take it. Don't have any tactics come due. That's the other thing, is you could just say, okay, I'm not going to be around. Brian and I took the whole month of August off one year. And we were intense in June, we were intense in August, but in July, we were gone. And that's what's possible if you're intentional about it. And I think that's having time off and reflection and joy like that. The canyon was the same deal. We were off. There's no coaching in the canyon, Kristin, other than the people around you.
Yeah, self-coaching or coaching. We had a client, your client, one of your clients, who they knew that they were going to be adopting a baby, and wanted to be all in for that new arrival and transition and what that meant. And so he knew that in order to hit his annualized goals, they had to be done by basically about August. It's mid-September, somewhere around in there, so that he could take those first 3 formative months off with that new baby. So it's the intentionality around it that allows you to, if you know you've got these things, it really gives you more motivation, more intentionality, more focus and clarity about why you're doing those things in the moment.
Yeah, and I mean, you and I have talked about this at length, and I know you have clients who have a major breakthrough in their first 12-week year, and then their second 12-week year is a little bit of a disappointment, because they were so successful in that first one that they maybe aren't as focused in the second one. You've had people that have had to learn the hard lessons through the first couple 12-week years, and they get routinely better and better. I would guess, so Kristin, that the person who understands this concept the best, that the finish line is not the end, is the person who's in their execution cycle and realizing that this piece is a step in what is a much bigger vision. This is why they go, and if you go through the 12-week year process, it's about the 3-year vision, feeding really what your 12-week plan is. And your 3-year vision's helping you create the life you aspire to create, right? So talk about the importance of that and making sure that people just take those natural steps and they understand they complete this cycle, but now there's something bigger.
It's almost like, if you know anything about drug addiction, there's a concept that says, you'll never achieve that first high. That high is the first amazing high you'll ever have, and nothing will ever reach those levels again. And that's part of why addiction occurs, because you're running after that elusive feeling you got from that first high. So there's that psychological side of that. The same can be said for I think short cycle execution and planning. I mean, the concept's powerful. It really creates clarity, focus, and intentionality. And if you operate in those parameters and you get those results, man, you get that first big high and you're like, I have arrived. I've got the thing. I know how to do this. It's going to be amazing from here on out. It's going to be better and better and better. But what you don't take into account is you can't replicate that first response, that engagement and that first successful cycle is not going to be the same in the next one. And the goal's not going to be as exciting, because now you're getting into some of that emotional cycle of change we talk about. You didn't know what you didn't know in the first 12 weeks. And when you started to see the results, it was real impetus to get you to keep going. Now, when you get into a second 12-week year and a third 12-week year and on and on and on, it's repetition, it's grind. It can start to become the same old. And so you start to lose interest because you're not getting that high like you had before. That's where the vision is absolutely critical to all of this. You have to keep connecting back to that vision, because ultimately that's going to be the best high you ever got.
Mm-hmm. And it's the most delayed. I think at the same time, I wonder, do you ever have clients that are on that path and they keep on, like Michael said, almost like repeating the same 12-week cycle over and over again and seeing growth and really creating a really good, comfortable lifestyle, that almost they get to a point in their 3-year vision that taking that next step of what it takes to really get to their 3-year vision means that they might risk losing the comfort of where they really are and that they've created. Like, can sometimes their success almost hold them back from future success?
Oh, absolutely. There's, if I do something and it doesn't work, will I create problems for where I'm at right now? Will it impact my financial picture, my family picture, any of that? It's like, this is good. This is good enough. I can live with this the rest of my life. And if that's what you want and you're okay with that, and your risk tolerance is low, then that's the right answer for you. But if you're somebody who feels that constant gnaw in the pit of your stomach, the back of your head, there's more, and I know I'm capable of more, and if I just could take the right steps, I can get there and it's going to be much more amazing, then that's the path that you have to take. But comfort is our biggest enemy. It keeps us from really truly tapping in to who we were built to be.
The last thing I want to just, like, the last response is the response I think that Kristin and I tend to have to these kind of things, is that we don't celebrate very well. Like, we almost get to the point where it's like, okay, I accomplished that goal. We did this. Now, what's next? And actually, I got another different response that maybe I can share. But like, it's like, now what's next? Like, okay, level 1 complete, now to level 2. Like, we almost don't celebrate the fact that we complete level 1. That's why you got to love the Super Mario Brothers. You get to the flagpole at the right time. It's got so many fireworks or whatever. I don't know if anyone got that analogy or not, but we don't have the fireworks in between level 1 and level 2. We just kind of go, okay, now it's on to the next one. And sometimes that celebration is really tough. And then the other thing that I think I tend to do is I set lofty, like, I almost do the whole shoot for the moon, you'll fall among the stars kind of thing, where I just almost like set these impossible lofty goals. And we make progress, but I get into a feedback loop of where I never feel like I ever achieve my goals.
You can do that. You can create those.
I think it's a dangerous loop, though. I'm struggling with it right now, Kristin, because I feel like I need some wins.
Well, I think so. Here's the thing. I think this is where people get stuck the most. I didn't hit my goal. And so you get this failure loop going in your head about, I didn't achieve my goal. I didn't achieve my goal. And because I think that's where the day-to-day successful progressions come in that we need to be celebrating those. The book says it clearly, greatness in the moment. It's greatness isn't when you hit the goal, you get the medal, you cross the threshold from the Grand Canyon. The greatness happens the moment when you decide, I'm going to do this trip, and it doesn't matter that I'm 40 pounds overweight and I have a chronic disease and I've got all these things against me telling me I can't do it. I made the decision to do it. And then each step thereafter, literally and figuratively, was the thing that was the success, not coming out of the canyon on day 3.
Love it.
We don't stop long enough to celebrate those successes. But you know what? You can't hit the goal without all those small successes along the way.
As you said that, Mike, I just want to jump on that for just a second.
Yeah.
I've known some clients who've had goals that they set so high, they knew they weren't going to make them. But they felt like it was causing them to do more than they would otherwise do. The problem is, to me, in my mind, on that is that the things that you have to do to hit this huge, exponentially large goal for yourself is not necessarily the same things you have to do to hit the goal that you need. So what ends up happening is you're doing other things other than the fundamental thing of driving home this much money so I could pay my team, I could pay my bills, I could pay, my retirement or whatever. And I think that's where, what's that?
What's retirement?
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. But so I'm all for setting stretch goals. I'm not for setting impossible goals in the short term. I think impossible goals are great for the lifetime, but in the short term, when you're going to actually be acting, I think you have to have goals that are realistic stretches, and that's dangerous to set goals that are crazy.
I'm falling into that trap right now.
Here's another thing I want to add to this is I get the pushback from my clients that say, "Why should I celebrate the things I'm supposed to be doing anyway?"
That would be my wife's response. Yes.
Supposed to. That's an interesting word.
Exactly. Those things that you're doing, you wouldn't have success if you didn't do them. You wouldn't have goal fulfillment if you didn't do them. You have to celebrate. I mean, who celebrates brushing their teeth every day? But let me add,
you're just glad you have teeth every day. Every day you wake up,
they're still there.
They're still there.
You're not connecting to the, it's those 90% of our thoughts are unconscious. But if you celebrated brushing your teeth every day, because when you're 95, you're going to have these pearly whites that are all yours and you're still happy with them and you have no cavities. I mean, that's a pretty great goal to have, because I don't know that many. I mean, if we have a few towns in Michigan where I think the whole town shares a set of teeth.
All the Walmart Wolverine fans. All right.
Oh, there we go. The Walmart Wolverine.
These people want to buy the jerseys.
But the point I'm making is, you can't celebrate the outcomes without celebrating the success steps along the way.
All right, well, let's wrap this up and give me some powerful movements of I crossed one finish line, and how do I make sure it propels me forward? I'll let either one of you who wants to start with that one. Like, how do I get on this cycle of success, basically, so that one successful loop starts leading me to the next successful loop?
Well, I don't know if you want to answer that, Kristin, or I can. So the 13th week we talked about it already, but the celebration there is not just a celebration, go ahead, party hats and stuff like that. It's really celebrating what got done, recognizing it, seeing the progress you made, but then pivoting pretty quickly to what's important now. And what do I have to, the Lou Holtz thing, or the who's the Alabama coach? I can't remember his name. Nick Saban, yeah. Whoever said that.
Lou Holtz said it, but that's right.
Yeah, that's true. Said last time. Anyway, that kind of connection with the successes that I've had, assimilate that stuff, and then get a goal that I really, really have an emotional connection to. Not a goal that other people expect me to do, not a goal that I got to do to get the bills, but a goal that if I hit it, it's gonna be great. That I can have an emotional connection to, because work is difficult, and work can sometimes be a drain. And if that's all I'm looking at, I'm going to struggle. So I want to have something that I'm looking at that's about what I get if I make this happen, right? And I don't know how to describe it in exact language, but it's that focusing on the outcome, not the cost. Because if I'm always focused on the cost, that's all I'm going to see, and I'm going to end up getting tired of paying the cost. If I'm focused on what I'm going to do, and I realize that when I get the tactics done, I'm actually doing the things it's going to take to make it happen, it feels the same almost psychologically as it does when you actually hit the goal. And so you can live in the goal. You can front end the goal, how it feels to hit the goal if you're doing that stuff. If you're executing the tactics in your plan, be intentional about recognizing your progress, recognizing your success, and it kind of front ends that for you. And it's a different mindset.
And I want to add something to that. Like I'm working through some things in my business right now, and I'm doing some things that are horrendously uncomfortable for me. And the stuff that I did 2 days ago was really exciting, really high energy. I was really happy with the outcomes. And the same tactic that I had to do yesterday, I was very low energy, and I was it's not usable content. But I feel like that day was even more successful for me than the really energetic, usable content from the day before, because I learned a lot of things from that. And without that day, the next sets of whatever I was doing aren't going to be as good. So even recognizing success in what you feel like is failure. Had a whole day of filming that was unusable content, but the lessons learned from that unusable content are going to excel today's much further, if that makes sense.
Well, I always say it all the time. I think most successful people feel like they're slowly failing. They feel like there's another level. They feel like there's that they could have done it better or whatever else, and they're constantly looking to improve it and whatever else. I think there's a lot of truth to that. So
you can begin you're thinking too, I see success in my failures. That can be really powerful.
Oh, yes. Thank you for that, Kristin. Thank you for that gift. Giving myself permission to see my success in my failures. I like that. And there's really not a failure. It's just a not yet. Right. So failure is when I would completely quit. Give up. Yeah.
Right.
Michael, I sent you a text just so you can watch the Lou Holtz What's Important.
Yeah, I saw that. Speaking of failure versus winning, yeah, I saw that. It's Lou Holtz talking about what's important now. So yeah,
just a little dose of Notre Dame football. Yeah. All right, we're gonna wrap it up with that. Good talk today. I thought about playing the video as we left, but it was 5 minutes long, so I did not do that. So
thank you.
You guys have an amazing day. We're down to the last little bit of these, so we've got. Next week is week 13. So we got 13, 14, 15. Cost is not value. I'll be tapping into really what set me apart early in my real estate career and why in 2008, 2009, and 2010, when the rest of the real estate world was singing the blues, I saw 200% increase in my business every single year. So what are you shaking your head for? I saw that little head shake there, Kristin. You don't believe
well, because that leads right back into what we were talking about today. You're in your doldrums of I don't feel like I'm, and you've got validation year over year in years where people completely exited the business. So you need to revisit yourself.
That close to get away, Mike. That close.
No, this is good stuff though. But I agree with you, Kristin. Like I'm actually been going back to that quite a bit. I mean, actually going back to, the way that I was resilient with everything I got to accomplish in basketball. And, I'm going to share somewhat of a story with you guys. I mean, it's not really a story, but on the basketball side, the NBA playoffs have started. Well, the number one seed in the West is the Oklahoma City Thunder. The number one seed in the East is the Cleveland Cavaliers. Both of them are led by players that played in my All-Star game that I was a part of, that we recruited to, that their best player, Donovan Mitchell and Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, both came out of my All-Star game before they went to college. And then I'm watching the Knicks, and the OG Anunoby was a guy who played in that game as well. And it's just, and again, the game hadn't been around for 8-9 years. And so it's just kind of cool to see these kids still having a massive impact. But I'm constantly right now going back to that, because there's a lot of truth into what I heard Brian Buffini tell me all these years ago, was if you've done it, I did it before, I can do it again. Right. And then the other truth is that if that person can do it, I can do it too. and finding some wins in those things. So, but we're going to unpack more of that again next week when we talk about cost is not value. And we will see you then. Take care, everybody.